We are back with Dr. Jae Kim. If you all did not catch our live show today on Bold Brave TV, that's okay. You can catch the recording. We are going to have some follow-up to a fun conversation we have earlier, which is about finding your own beauty, much like how I've mentioned to you all before about being able to define your own success. It's also a beautiful and wonderful place when you can define your own beauty and not let yourself be sidetracked by what you see as beautiful online, or diving through TikTok, or diving through all the things that are filters these days. I don't know if filters are, when I've had a long night and not a lot of sleep, a filter is great. But under normal conditions, I found that it's like unachievable. It's deflattering, because it's like, how are these results even achievable if I don't have a filter on my pictures all the time? So, I guess time will tell as we see time go on with whether, how filters affect our generations. And all I have to say is I'm so glad I didn't grow up with a cell phone. I'm glad all of that was after my time, because it seems like such a rough world. But anyway,
Yeah.
Dr. Jae Kim is a double board certified surgeon. He comes with a list of accolades, and at the end of the day, what he is he's also a empathetic human being who is also an entrepreneur. He's running a business, he's building relationships, and he is just out there in the world doing great work. He does not just plastic surgeries for beautification and improvements, but also for reconstructions. And for those of you that know me well, I mentioned this on the live show as well. I've been through a breast reconstruction, and it's definitely not a boob job. And I have such gratitude for doctors that do this work, because they can help us kind of recreate as closely as possible some of the things that we've lost. And other times they can help us just, turn back time a little bit. So with that, Dr. Kim, thank you for joining us for the extended version of the show. I want to dive right in. Talk to me about the best relationship advice you ever got, because you're a relationship doctor anyway. You do that in your business. But let's talk about like our close, intimate relationships. What is the best relationship advice you've ever gotten?
I think the best relationship advice I ever got was just listen.
Ooh.
There's a lot to be said when you just close your mouth, let the other person speak. The cool thing about that is a lot of the time they'll start by saying one thing, and then by the time you finish listening, it has distilled down to what's actually on their heart, on their mind.
Hmm.
A lot of the times, like for example, like I had a patient who had double eyelid surgery, and I could upload their result on my website. It was that good, right? And this person, she lived from out of town, and she wanted another telehealth follow-up visit. And so, we scheduled it, and she comes up on the camera, and I said, you know, tell me about what's making you unhappy. And it turns out it wasn't even the result. It was that people in her life were feeding her negative thoughts.
Hmm.
And I said, I wish I could do something about that. But at the end of the day, you know, it's something that you have to figure out how to block it out, the negative thoughts, or block the person, even if
Hmm.
they are your dear family. And it's sad that sometimes, if I had just said, oh, your result looks fine, click and call, I would have never gotten down to the bottom of it, you
Right.
know and it gave her an opportunity to open up and say, this is why I'm unhappy. And the most I can do at that point is listen to her concern and say, hey, this is how we got you from where you started to where you are. um, you know you have to ask yourself, are you happy with how you look? And try to filter out what everybody else around you is saying, because it kind of goes back to aspects of your message. This is your beauty, this is your life, this is your success, your happiness.
Right.
Um, and so, definitely the best relationship advice is to listen.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I think it's such a beautiful testament when we can be the person who is listening and helping someone else feel heard. And on the same end, on the other end of the spectrum, also how good it feels when someone hears us. I was literally just talking to an old friend about this because he had a just recently had a heart surgery, stent surgery, uh, to take care of some blocked arteries, and he had called his siblings to say, "Hey, by the way, I'm having this all of a sudden, surprise surgery. I need to have the stent put in because I've got stuff wrong with my heart that I'm just finding out through." He was doing his annual physical, and they stopped him from, he was like running on the treadmill, and they had stopped him. They said, "Your heart's taking on just way too much." And he was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, I do hit workouts twice a day. Like, no problem." They're like, "Your heart is like you could be having a heart attack like in the next couple of years if we didn't catch this." So it became this, he
Wow.
had to medivac him over to another country. It was a whole thing. And he said to me, he said, he goes, "I was shocked that when I called my brother and said, 'Hey, I'm, having this procedure,' he goes, the first words out of my brother's mouth was, 'Oh man, I've just been so busy.'" Like he did, as if he didn't even hear what he said. And he said his sister was also just too inundated with her own chaos. And we had the whole conversation around, what do you do when there's people in your life who just really aren't supportive? Here he is kind of reaching out to his family like,
Mm,
"Hey, this, I have a health something." You think there would be some level of listening that happen, active listening that shows up and says, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" But instead they just went right
yeah.
back into their own chaos in their world. And I thought about that and I said, well, we can commiserate over those people who we were born into these families, right? We can commiserate about the attitudes that are showing up or not showing up, or how we think we'd love them to be versus the reality of what is. But also we can also choose to go, maybe it's time to get some new chosen family. Maybe it's time to get some new community. Maybe
Hmm.
these aren't the people that I'm reaching out to when I need support and when I need to feel held and heard and loved. And I just think that that part, although it's easier said than done, because a lot of times these might be people we live with or people that we have to see
Yeah.
often, like there is something to be said for upgrading our friend circle and having those people in our life
Mm.
who are the family we choose versus the family that we were born into. And I just think,
Mm.
how many times do we meet someone who, and even in your line of work, how often does someone show up with this self image or with a criticism about themselves that isn't even their own, right? That maybe
Right.
somebody else threw on them, right? Because I mean, think about it. If we,
Mm.
if your mom, if you woke up every day and your mom was constantly saying to you, "Hey, there's something wrong with your nose. Hey, there's something wrong with your nose. Hey, there's
Mm.
some," even if you don't think anything's wrong with your nose, at some point you're going to be like, "Oh, maybe something's wrong with my nose because she's telling me every single day that something's
Right.
wrong with my nose." And then how do we battle that? So when that shows up for you in any, clients, Dr. Kim, like, what does that conversation look like?
Yeah. The important thing that we have to glean out is, whom are you doing this for? You know, if it's for yourself and you have a foundation of, hey, this is my worth, my value as a human being, and this is how I bring my beauty to the world, then if we build on top of that, then that's actually great prospect for success versus somebody who grew up with baggage. We'll just call it baggage for, you know, and we'll say somebody like you mentioned grew up saying, with input from other people saying, "Oh, what's wrong with your nose?" Or, Asian aunties always love to say, "Oh, what's wrong with your face? Did you gain weight? What are those pimples?" All those kinds
Yes.
of things.
Yes.
Yeah. um,
So
that
true.
and there are other, depending on how you grew up, there are hurdles, I would say, in terms of getting over those to hear the right messages for yourself and to affirm for yourself, hey, this is my worth, this is my beauty. Yeah, that conversation can be quite hard sometimes. And it can happen with younger people, teens, early 20s, but
Sure.
it's not necessarily, something that everybody automatically attains over as they get older. Some people in their 50s and 60s, a lot of their self-image is tied to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to dispel that notion, especially when you're older, because you've lived with that mindset for so long.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I know that, for particularly in the, I could say this for my Asian American household, like beauty was definitely up there in the list. I remember, my mom making a comment of like, she's like, oh, you should put a little lipstick on and maybe a little blush. She goes, it looks so good because then you don't look like a homeless person. And the first time she said it, I was like, wait, what? But to her, like it's the presentation. She was about, my mom sewed clothes. She's a seamstress. She could sew clothes her whole life, and so she makes beautiful clothes. And she grew up really poor, where she had, I think, one pair of shoes and two sets of clothes. So to be able to grow up and learn how to make those things, it's where it becomes high on her value system, right? And so that's where that
Mm,
comment is coming from. And it's not because she really thinks I look like a homeless person, but she's got a high value on how we present ourselves in public. And to her, it was like, ooh, can we dress it up just a little bit? Can we look this good? And
mm,
the other beautiful part of that is I love my mom dearly, and she's so encouraging. And with the exception of that, I can also, because she raised me, can also retort back to her and go, actually, I like what this looks like. And maybe I don't want to put
mm,
any makeup on, maybe that doesn't feel good for me. And so I think, and it's
mm.
really not that it doesn't feel good. I wish someone would come over and put makeup on me every day, but I'm actually just too lazy to put it on every day. I have no desire to just pack it
Yep.
on. Yeah. But it's all our own. We all have to come up with our own definition and own it. And I think that's the biggest part. and
Yeah.
and that's why I think I can so confidently and lovingly have these conversations with my mom, because I'm like, hey, more power to you, mom. At 80, you are still putting on the blush, doing your eyes, doing your eyebrows, going for it. I love it. You do you. And I'm gonna be over here fresh and natural.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Dr. Kim, switching gears, you're also an entrepreneur. I went through all the things in medical school and then some. And I imagine you come out of that with a big, giant bill. And no one really teaches us in school as entrepreneurs how to like handle our finances, right? They don't really give us the ops one, two,
Mhm.
three. So, what's the best financial advice that you've ever gotten?
So yeah, as a child of immigrants, sometimes you hear your parents say, "Oh, we started out with nothing."
Mm,
Well, I started out with less than nothing. I was more than $200,000 in the hole, right? It's the you can wait for a big windfall, um, but in the meantime, you have to do the little things consistently. So, saving whatever your savings rate is, for it can be even $50 a month, it can be $500 a month, $5,000 a month, whatever. I think just in terms of, as entrepreneurs, we love systems, right? And just having something that is going to be regular, consistent. And the great thing is there are so many ways to automate those nowadays. And so that kind of was the beginning for my journey from more than $200,000 in med school debt. The great thing about well, I mean, whatever great thing there might be about student loans is that I got a chance to refinance. So in my era of med school, interest rate was at 6.8%, which nowadays seems kind of normal. And after I finished my training, I was able to refinance it down a few percentage points. So it's at that point where a lot of financial experts say pay down your high interest debt first, and then you can just coast on your low interest debt. So thankfully, it's now at around the low to mid fours, and so that counts as one of our low interest debts, which I'm not in any rush to accelerate payment on as of now.
yep. Yep, I love that. I love that. Yeah, people get so like I think understanding like how to play the money game is really important. And I think if people understood credit and interest rates a little bit better, they can also see like where if you have a 1% interest rate, which is that's what I had back in the day. I paid my loans off a long time ago, but like I just remember looking at that and going, why would I ever pay that off? It's 1% and I'm using someone else's money while I'm leveraging,
Hmm.
my own money in the way that I need to play. And so I think that
Yeah.
sometimes people just see it as like numbers and they're like, oh, I got to get through this so fast. It's like, whoa. How can you
Hmm.
leverage this and actually play the game with debt and with credit? And
Hmm.
there's not really a great class on that. So that might be, in your retirement, maybe you can
Yeah.
work us all through that. Awesome. So
Mhm.
tell me what you love the very, very most about the work that you're doing.
I think the thing that I love the most is my patients' faces when they smile and they have a
Mm,
great result. There's kind of like I was mentioning before, the way that we distinguish ourselves as a human species and also as individuals is really in our face and neck, or our face.
mm,
And there has never been anyone who will look like you, and there never will be anyone who looks like you. And so when you help somebody embrace their unique beauty and take it to the next level, and when they um, appreciate the process that it took to get from point A to point B, um, that smile on their face is that's gold.
yeah. Yeah. When you can see a person beaming on the other side, right? Because they're happy with what's
Mm.
going on. Yeah. I like to call it, or I like to say that my work is to throw the seeds, right? Throw the seeds of inspiration, throw the seeds of wisdom, throw the seeds of, hey, here's what I've learned. And I hope that these lessons will
Mm.
take you, or here's a thing that I can guide you on. And the thing is, I don't always get to see the garden. I don't always get to see the bloom. And so when we do have someone come
Yeah.
to us and they have a smile on their face and they have joy around something that they've accomplished or something that they've been able to break through, it's beautiful because we get to see the garden. And I imagine in your work that as you're out there sowing the seeds, which is doing the
Mm.
work, that it must be so rewarding because you get to come back and see the garden and see how people respond afterwards. I love that.
Yeah,
So beautiful.
absolutely. You
I love that. Dr. Dr.
the
Kim,
diff.
any
Mhm.
go ahead.
In some ways, the planting the seed and not being able to realize the fruit of that, um, that's kind of like sometimes that process that it takes. Um, it can it and I kind of mentioned this on some of my content is that sometimes it can make you get disheartened a little bit, right? You're not seeing
Mm,
the quick wins.
yeah,
You're sometimes you're alone in your thoughts like, hey, is this process supposed to have ebbs and flows? And for a lot of people it does. And
right.
so I think kind of your message that resonate another aspect of your message that resonates with me is that like even through the tough times, even through the ups and downs of that emotional or mental journey, that you still believe in yourself, you still believe in your beauty, that you will get there.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's the having the vision for what the garden can look like, right? It's having the vision
Mm.
for what can be that may not exist yet. And that's kind of the essentials, I think, of faith and being able to find and reach out to that thing that's unseen that you haven't quite gotten a hold of yet. But knowing that it's there and that
Mm.
it's possible. And that's the biggest win is understanding possibility and what that can feel like, and for anyone out there that, you're reaching for a goal or you're trying to achieve a thing or you're heck you might just trying to get your kids to bed at night at a decent hour so that you can have some mommy or daddy time, like just remember like so much of that is being able to be really present with yourself and also to lean into what can that feel like if you haven't felt it yet. What's the possibility of what that can
Mm.
feel like? And as you savor those feelings and you create that energy, it's beautiful how it can show up for you when you do have that time, and then you go, oh, this is what it feels like. Ah, got it. And then once you
Yeah.
actually have done it, now you really have it seated inside of you because you really do know what it feels like, and you can go back and sit in that moment, whether it's gratitude,
Mhm.
whether it's rest, whatever it is, whatever season of life you're in, and whatever that you need. I love that. Dr. Kim, well,
Yeah.
tell me some things that you do to keep yourself sharp, to keep yourself motivated, to keep your mindset right. I see a lot of books behind you. I'm imagining that you're probably somewhat of a reader.
I
Are
try.
you a guy who listens to podcasts? Are you a guy who, um, you know, uh, watches Gaia? Like, what is your magic? What's your magic potion when it comes to your process
Mhm.
around keeping things right up in here?
Yeah. So, just kind of going along with the previous thought, I think one of the biggest things that I've learned to do probably over the past year or so is just to set time aside to do nothing.
Mm,
And at work, every day in a certain, time block, my staff know not to disturb me because
mm,
um, I need time to reset, refocus, and that's something that, again, in our education, they don't teach you. It's go, 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 80 hours every week, every week, every week. You're taking care of so many patients, and you don't have time to eat, much less time to sit in your own thoughts and reflect. And so for me, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, I always emphasize having time, just no phone, no people, no nothing. And I use that time for meditation or just to reflect on the thoughts of the day. Sometimes I use it for prayer. The I need that time to re-energize. And if I am continuously, you know, burning energy to serve my patients and my staff, it doesn't do them as good a service if I'm running on empty. So I need that time to recharge. That's one of the bigger changes I've made over the last year in terms of keeping myself focused and sharper. The other thing along those lines is actually to get professional mental help. And I don't I have actually, I'm not officially diagnosed with any kind of mental illness, but I think as somebody, as a high achieving professional, I think it's always good to find a professional counselor, therapist, um, to help process your thoughts and emotions. And I kind of got into this because I just felt at a mental block. And my counselor, who is through a faith-based organization, he said you have to set your boundaries, and that's probably one of the biggest things I've had to learn over the past year. And it kind of goes along with the do not disturb time, is setting boundaries. And so these are boundaries for yourself. I can just have 15 minutes with me and my dog, um, or just alone in my room, whatever it may be, and just recharge, refresh, re-energize.
I love that. I love that so much. I feel like you setting that time, that meditation time alone where your staff like knows not to bother you, that is a boundary, right? And so you're creating these beautiful bumpers for yourself to create the environment that you need to get into the headspace that's going to be the best for you. And I'm with you on, finding that professional, that coach, that person who can really help you ground yourself, whether you have any kind of diagnosis or not. I think that it's really important to have someone to, whether you're talking it out. I just finished my certification in somatic therapy. That's another one of just being able to move your body, to move that energy out of your body, because not everybody likes to talk it out. Sometimes people just can't find the words, and that's just not how they're designed. So I think that helping
I
people
think men are
understand that there's
designed
so
like that
many.
more.
I know. I think so. I think you're right. I do think you're right. Yeah, but
Mhm.
But the truth is, I think that it's sort of like the senses, right? Like we say, like, or how we
Mm.
learn. Some people say, oh, I'm a visual learner, or I'm an auditory learner. It's like, no, actually, it's all the things. We all learn by sort of putting all the pieces together, what we hear, what we see. And I feel like it's the same way when it comes to dealing with life. You know, we can
Mm.
call traumas of our past, or we can call just life of what's happening to us, and most of all, just however we're perceiving what's happening to us, right? Because you and I could be in the same
Mm.
room, and uh, they could put a pile of poop on the floor and throw it and be like, here you go. And one person might come into the room and be like, oh my gosh, this is terrible, this is the worst thing, it smells horrible, what is all this poop doing in the room, I can't believe it. And then the next person could walk in and be like, oh my gosh, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. So it's so much of that is just how we're viewing life and our perception of things, and having someone, I think, that we can have an outlet with and bounce some things off of. I feel like in my practice that one of the biggest turning points is being able to give people perspective, and also just literally allowing people to speak their thoughts out loud, to have someone to bounce ideas off of, to have someone that you
Mhm.
that you can express your confidences in, that you can share all the things that are coming out without judgment, and just be like, hey, talk this out with me, or help me move this out of my body, like how do I flush this out. And sometimes it's, hey, how do you just sit with the discomfort for a little while? Because sometimes that's what we have to do too.
Mm.
Sometimes we just have to sit through the discomfort, and that's really where the growth happens. So,
That's so good.
Dr. Kim, any last words or wisdom that you'd like to share with us today before we wrap this portion of the show?
Yeah, I feel like one thing I've been kind of in tune with more recently is um, this idea of growth. When you try to grow, if you keep doing most of the things that you're currently doing, you'll grow in kind of a linear fashion. And I think this is from Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Um, so when you grow linearly, it's all fine, but um, if you want to 10x instead of 2x is his term, you have to abandon most of what you're currently doing to get to where you are. And much of medical education and career, I feel like the next step, you keep about 10 to 20% of what you know, but you're changing about 80 to 90% to get to that next level. So, like the first 2 years of med school, it's a lot about books. The last 2 years of med school, you're applying maybe 10 to 20% of all those little biochemistry facts into your learning to treat patients. And then once you go to residency, like 10 to 20% of that initial knowledge from medical school you keep, and then the new 80 to 90% comes in. So it's kind of easy to see through your education because it's framed out for you. But once you get into career, that's something I'm still navigating in terms of, hey, what's the 10 to 20% that I need to keep? What's the 80 to 90% that I need to change? So that's the next challenge for me.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's so juicy. When I hear you say that, what comes to mind for me is how we keep what we can use, and sometimes the rest we just store away for another day, or we leave it on the table, and then something else shows up that
Mm.
reinforces the thing we left on the table in the time we need it. And so I think part of it is also trusting that we're also going to
Mm.
get what we need, and that it's going to show up for us when we need it, and that anything we might have missed can always come again later, or it can revisit itself in a different way. And really our brain kind of goes back into the stores and goes, oh, we heard that before somewhere, but now it applies to our
Mm-hmm.
life, right? So I think that's such a beautiful ebb and
Yeah.
flow, instead of having to feel like we have to know 100% of all the things. And what you're saying
Mm-hmm.
really reminded me, because I read a book this last month. I read a lot. And this one, for those of you listening, is by Vic Johnson. It's actually, I think, a relatively old book, but it was really good because it has practices you can do at the end of each chapter so that you can reinforce the learning and the lessons in each of the chapters of the book. And the book is called You Become What You Think About, How Your Mind Creates the World You Live In. And so much of the conversation we've had today is about, how we each pursue beauty and how we have our own definition of what that is. And so much of that is by
Mm-hmm.
reining in our thoughts. It's our self-talk. It's how we perceive how others are talking to us or at us. And it's also
Mm-hmm.
what we see on maybe the TV or on our screens that create, again, these images or perceptions in our mind that aren't always ours. And so it's really important to go back and check your own self talk. Where are you reinforcing for yourself that you're beautiful on the inside or the outside? And where are you not? Where do you encourage yourself versus where do you criticize yourself? And I just thought that this book had such really great basic prompts to help you journal out and get to thinking about why you think the way that you do. So for any of you struggling with some self talk or some self image, it's a really good read. It's a short read and it's got some great exercises to do in the back of the book. So again, that's You Become What You Think About by Vic Johnson, for those of you that are readers and doers. All right. Well, Dr. Kim, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you so much. For anyone wanting to work with Dr. Kim, find out more about him, please check out the notes section. We have all of his information there. You can connect with him on social as well. And with that, I wish you all a blessed day, and we'll see you back here next week.
Thank you so much.